But also the funniest part about him is that so much of the casual drama in this show revolves around the boiled chicken smoothies that he makes.
I'm sorry, that's an ick for me. That's an immediate no for me. Matthew. You can't... I'm trying to pull myself together right now. I'm trying to not have a total meltdown over the fact that you just said the words to me, boiled chicken smoothie.
Hello and welcome to Can't Let It Go. It's an audio PowerPoint party. My name is Matt and I use he, him pronouns.
I'm AC. I use they, them pronouns.
And today we're going to be talking about a Netflix show called The Boyfriend.
Fascinating. I know very little about this and I'm so excited to dig in.
I was going to ask this later, but do you watch dating reality shows at all?
So I have a friend group that watches Love is Blind together. But
perfect.
If I wasn't part of that, so I've watched all of the seasons of Love is Blind, but if I didn't have that context, I wouldn't watch reality dating shows on my own.
Yeah, I feel this way, but it's about Jonathan. He will watch any thing that seems vaguely interesting and I'll watch them with him. But if he was not in my life, I would not be watching these.
I love the description of he'll watch anything that's vaguely interesting, which is just that's so much. I love that.
Yeah. But yeah, if he was not in my life, I would not be watching your average dating show. It's
incredible.
Just not something I'm interested in,
yeah.
Which makes The Boyfriend interesting. We'll get into it, but there's also a history of me watching shows like this, just because I think The Boyfriend comes from a certain lineage. But before we get into that lineage, I want to tell you what the show is.
Yeah.
So first, I'll just have you click into our notes and look at that top image and just tell me what you see.
I see what I assume to be some very attractive queer, gay, men, who are all of Asian descent.
Yes, exactly.
Of various kinds of Asian descent.
Yeah. Yeah. So The Boyfriend is a Japanese dating show with a cast of all men. And the boys are not all Japanese, but the show is, and they speak Japanese on the show.
Okay.
And I will say, it is a spoiler that there are 9 men on this show. You're seeing an image of 8, and it's actually in the first episode you get a bonus boy, and you get up to 6. But
okay.
The sort of steady state of the show is about 8 guys in a house. The premise of the show is that they are just living in this house called the Green Room, and they are working together in a coffee truck, and they're just trying to find love. That's it. So Love is Blind has these sort of contrived things they make them do and all of that. But largely in this show, the guys wake up, the iPad that they have that is the producer speaking to them tells them to choose someone to go work. They will pick one of the guys and say, you choose who you want to go work on the coffee truck with you today, which is the way that they produce drama is by asking them to choose what other guy they want to work with. And then that's followed up by what the guys who stayed at home do, or what they do at night when they're all together, or them cooking dinner. The kinds of things that are happening on the show are you're watching them shop for groceries on the limited budget they're given.
Okay, interesting. So kind of like the real world?
Yeah, except I think the real world was more intentionally creating extremely high level drama.
Okay, yeah. I guess the context for you, right, of Love is Blind, they're also constantly plying them with alcohol, right? The same is true very much on The Real World or on Jersey Shore or any of these sort of shows where the premise is that all of these people work and live together that are coming to my mind.
Right.
They also drink and party together. Is that true here?
If they are drinking and partying together, it is their own decision.
Okay.
At least as far as the show paints that to be.
Interesting. So it's slice of life-esque?
Yeah, absolutely slice of life dating show. That is what it's going for. Again, it comes from a long lineage of not just reality shows, but specifically Japanese reality shows, and also dating shows. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes that we'll definitely talk about. But the face that the show presents to the world is like, this is authentic, this is real. There's none of this kind of contrived BS. There's no like obvious like you said, plying people with alcohol to get them to do stupid things.
Yeah.
It's not Love is Blind where you have to decide if you're going to marry someone in a week, you know.
There's not like a villain like character who's set up to be the villain.
You know?
Oh?
We're about to get into the boys, and I might tell you about a villain.
Okay.
Like, so as I was writing the notes, just I wrote down some scenes that were happening because I was kind of watching in the background. I watched a guy put on a face mask in the morning. I watched two others work out. It was actually kind of sensual because one of them was like over the other one's crotch, like holding him down. I was like, oh, we're jumping right into that.
Yeah.
There was just a random, like multiple second shot of a window with a curtain blowing in front of it.
Okay.
Like just very low key. Like think cinematic kind of feel, but very like Japanese cinema kind of feel. Everything's
Very
really
interesting,
symmetrical, really clear lines. The house is really built for that as well. The most dramatic show, like the one where they change the music on purpose so that you know it's the dramatic part.
God, I love Netflix's original music in the shows. Okay, well, say more.
is when one of the guys moves another guy's hand off of his like belly area. They are literally cuddling on the couch, and this guy just grabs his hand and like politely moves it away, and they play like a dun dun noise over it. Like when I say that the show is like not dramatic and they're like in the edit having to manufacture that drama,
sure,
that's very intentional. It's trying to do a lot of things. Again, we'll get to the lineage soon, but like it's trying to play off of this like idea that like people just want to watch things that are calm, going all the way back to Great Pottery Throwdown, right?
Yeah.
We talked about like A Safe Place to Land. Like that is very much the atmosphere and the vibe this thing is going for. But even the Great Pottery Throwdown has a competition.
Yeah. So is there a competition element on this show at all?
There is no competition. There's just, hey, you guys are living in this house for a month with the goal of finding love. And like, it's really up to you what that experience is like.
Okay. And there is competition in that, like, it's the limited pool of potentially finding love within the house is the goal, right?
Yeah.
But not like manufactured, like, there's like, it's not like Big Brother or Love Island where there are like challenges that are intentionally trying to connect people.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, like we just got done watching The Mole, and I like season 2, and I was like that whole show could happen without all of the missions they do in that show. But like it wouldn't be very fun, you know?
Right.
But this is like, okay, make it a dating show, and now we've done that. And like actually I think maybe The Mole could be fun if it was just them having drama in a house, you know?
Yeah. Interesting.
So I want to talk about the cast.
Okay.
I'm gonna explain these people, and I'm gonna state where they're from, because a thing that I have learned in watching a lot of Japanese reality television is that is pretty core to how people experience each other. Like ethnicity and race is like obviously a thing in the United States. It's just like it exists very prominently and differently in Japanese culture from what I can tell, right?
Yeah.
Just like big caveat to this episode is like from what I can tell. I've never been to Japan, much less have that
God, I want to go
perspective.
to Japan so bad.
It's the next place we're going. So the cast will start with Dai. He's a 22-year-old Japanese student. Okay. He is like really clean cut, kind of your straightforward, mostly extroverted man. If you're looking at the picture I sent you, he is in the bottom right in the green and blue stripes.
Okay. My guess was either the button, like the zip up or button up white one, or the stripes. Okay, great. Stripes. Yeah. I got it.
Then you have Alan. He's 29 years old. He's Brazilian, Italian, and Japanese. He's an IT worker. You learn very quickly that he is super loud, and contrary to the rest of the cast, he's very forward with his feelings. And that's not just like his feelings about the other guys. It's about anything. Yeah. So he's sitting next to Dai to his left in that image. Then you have Gensei, who is a 34-year-old Japanese makeup artist. He's super quiet. I wouldn't say that he's shy, but he gives me the vibes of someone that's like a little bit insecure in their quietness. May not be true how he comes off to me. There's this super cute scene in the first couple episodes where he's just cutting Dai's hair, and it's not like a lovey-dovey thing. It's just like queer friends being cute, and it makes me feel like good feelings about queers existing.
Yeah, I love that. One of my favorite Archie Bongiovanni art panels is the panel that's like it just says it's like two queer people in that same sort of like setup, right? Like getting their hair cut at home, and it says we can do it ourselves.
Yeah.
That's like a sentiment that I love. So I love that.
Ginsei is at the bottom on the far left in that image. Then you have Ikuo, who is not in this image. He's the last one to join the cast. He's 22 years old. He's a Japanese food worker. My opinion on him is that if he was American and straight, he'd be the quarterback and the homecoming king.
Okay. Hot, and he knows it.
Yes.
Okay.
And also is maybe the one that I find the most attractive watching the show.
Classic. Okay.
Fits how I approach American men as well, very often.
Fair.
Then you have Kazuto. He's 27 years old. He's a Japanese chef. He is the one on the white that you mentioned.
Okay.
And despite not being the oldest, I think he comes off as one of the most together of the group.
Okay.
Also, all of them love this man.
Okay.
I don't get it. But like there are full scenes of just like him being like, I can't keep up with all these confessions. Like he tells somebody at one point, he's like, did we have to do this alone? Like, couldn't we just have this in like the room with everyone? Because it's so clear he just like doesn't want to have to respond to like 5 or 6 men coming after him one by one.
Oof.
I don't understand what they see in him. He's not bad. I just don't get why he's like the hot guy on set.
Okay, so you see, the thing is Matt, like what you just said about like your type, it's like, it seems like maybe you're not susceptible to what I like line cook energy. Do you know about line cook energy?
I don't.
Oh my God. Okay. Line cook energy is like this shorthand way to refer to like if you've worked in restaurants, if you've worked in kitchens, like you know what I'm talking about for sure. I have also in my past like dated a line cook. And the thing that I think happens like is that we are like, oh, chefs are like, you know, they're cool. Like it's like a really professionalized job, all this kind of stuff. But like chefs are just better trained line cooks, right? Like they were line cooks before they were chefs.
Right.
And so like the best way that I can describe line cook energy to you is like why everyone is obsessed with Carmy in The Bear. Other than Jeremy Allen White is like objectively hot, but it's like the kind of the bad tattoos. He's kind of like a scruffy kind of guy. I mean, this guy seems pretty clean cut, right? Like not very scruffy, but like there's just something about them.
Right. He's the kind of guy who just like showers just enough to still be hot.
Correct. Yes.
And that itself is kind of hot.
Yes. Yeah.
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 I get it. It's not my thing, but I get it. Then you have Ryota, who is 28 years old. He's a Japanese model and barista. He is pretty reserved, but I would say he's very confident. He knows what he wants, and what he wants is Kazuto. You have Shun, who's 23 years old. He's a Japanese artist and DJ. And here is where I will caveat and say that we're going to talk about some pretty dark stuff about a different reality show that definitely inspired this one later on. And a lot of the dark stuff there came from harassment and bullying. And I'm going to try and steer clear of that while also being honest about like my feelings watching the show.
Yeah.
So I'll say that while Shun is not the youngest on the show, I think he comes off as the youngest. He talks a lot about a previous relationship that to me sounds traumatic in some way. And if it's the case, I think it explains a lot of his behavior. He does explicitly tell someone at one point that he's less interested in somebody the more interested they are in him.
Oof.
Yeah.
Yike.
So you were asking about villain edits, and I think Shun gets the villain edit in this show.
Oh, okay, I see.
And I don't know if it's because it was intentional in like the editing booth or in the production during the show, during shooting, or if that's just like who he presented as on the show. No clue.
Yeah. Honestly, sometimes it's hard to tell. I mean, this is, of course, like the villain edit is such a big part of like the RuPaul's Drag Race discourse of like, was the person who got the villain edit on that show actually like awful? And like sometimes yes and sometimes no. So I'm with you on not watching the show. It could be either, right?
Right. It really could be. Then we have Taehan.
Okay.
That is a guess on pronunciation. I did watch him say his name like 4 times to try and get that right. But he's a 34-year-old Korean designer. And I do wish I could tell you more about this man, but he takes a backseat through the 8 episodes that are out right now. One thing that he does say is that he's not out to his family and that he expects them to watch this show and find out that he's queer.
Oh, okay.
I don't know how he identifies, so I'm using queer.
Sure.
But like that is a really stark departure from the rest of the cast. They're all out in some way or another.
Yeah.
I've read a decent amount about like why does he seem to have faded in the background, and the sentiment or the assumption people are making seems to be that like it might just be that he's Korean that is like leading to like a bias that is just like people are not as interested in him.
Yeah.
Which that might be Americans on the internet talking as if they understand Japanese gay men or something like that, but also I have no idea. Like they might know more than me.
I mean, I know from like friends of mine who have lived in Korea at various points that like certainly it is like not as acceptable, even in Japan and like or Korea, like it is not as acceptable to be openly queer as like it is here, right? And I don't know that there's like a good like is that even like is that it is more acceptable here but still dicey in some places and very situational based on like even down to the neighborhood where you live, like the amount of safety that you experience. So it's very interesting.
Yeah.
And also coming out as a very personal choice, and how you choose to do it is yours to make, right? Et cetera.
Agreed. I have not told you the last few. So Shun is on the far left in the top of this image. Taehan is in the yellow open shirt.
Okay.
And Ryota's at the top right. And then the other guy in the blue is Yusak, who is a 36-year-old Japanese go-go dancer.
Oh.
In like the first or second episode, we go to like a gay club and see a bunch of men strip into their underwear. And they're like, haha, what if one of these guys was the other cast member? And then they go back behind the set or whatever. And like he walks in and he's like, I'm joining the house.
That's so funny. Wow. Okay. Now I'm actually very excited to watch this.
So apparently Yusak is really famous in gay nightlife in Japan.
Okay, cool.
Like when Alan joins the cast, he like freaks out. He's like, oh my God, Yusak. With him, they very much play up the stripper with a heart of gold thing.
Love.
But it seems to be really true. Like that seems to be just like who this man is.
Listen, every stripper I've ever known has been an impeccable person.
Exactly. Like the crazy thing is he makes really incredible art of all of the guys at one point. Aww. But also the funniest part about him is that so much of the casual drama in this show revolves around the boiled chicken smoothies that he makes.
I'm sorry, that's an ick for me. That's an immediate no for me. Matthew. You can't. I'm trying to pull myself together right now. I'm trying to not have a total meltdown over the fact that you just said the words to me, boiled chicken smoothie.
So one of the first things that happens when he shows up at the house the day after they go to this club, as he opens up like this freezer bag and it just has like 4 chicken breasts. And then they show him boiling them, putting them in a blender with water and blending them up. And then he tries to get 2 of the other guys to drink with him. And Shun makes a face that I was like cackling at the second time I saw it even.
I'm first of all, I'm trying to think of a rational scenario where I meet a person who offers me a boiled chicken smoothie. And first of I is it still hot when he's drinking it?
You know, that's never clear.
Okay. Actually, you know, I don't want to know that. It doesn't matter. The temperature, that is okay.
I forget how much he says that he needs, but it's like the way he views it is that he needs a certain amount of protein for his job. And this is an easy way to get it.
Sure.
And a cheap way to get it.
Sure.
But then so much of the drama is around like their limited budget for groceries and how much of it goes to chicken breasts for his smoothies.
Okay, scenario. You go on a reality show to potentially find love and move into a house with 8 other guys, and one of these guys makes fucking boiled chicken smoothies every goddamn day. What do you do?
I guess it depends on how hot he is.
Would you? This is a new. I love doing like would you rather prompts as like the team, like as my team like questions for our meetings, and we love the most bizarre ones. Boiled chicken smoothie is getting written down as a would you rather have a roommate who drinks a boiled chicken smoothie every day or go on a reality dating show is maybe what it's gonna be.
Somebody will know what you're talking about. So that's the guys on the show. I will say one of my favorite parts of the show is like how open they are about a bunch of stuff that I kind of don't expect from Japanese media. Really early in the show, they acknowledge that some of them are probably bisexual and like have a conversation about that. And when they're talking and they're just like random discussions about dating and whatnot, like that is brought up as a possible reality. So it's not just, you know, a bunch of gays assuming that they are like the normative one in the room when there's a bunch of, a bunch of like other possibilities. It's really, I don't know. It's just like, it keeps catching me off guard. There's a scene in like the first episode when they're having to brand the coffee truck their own. And so they're trying to come up with a name for it. And they're talking about like, oh, well, should we use the word boys? Right. And they start having a conversation about like, does everyone here identify with the word boy? And they're like having a conversation about gender. That's interesting. I think it's interesting too that like they talk about it in English, like in terms like it'll be Japanese. And then they like start having conversations using English pronouns. Right. And I'm just like, I don't know how that works in Japan and we don't get any more information on it.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I would love to know more.
Yeah.
The thing that I felt is there's a lot of conversations had here that like wouldn't exist in American queer dating shows even. Yeah. Yeah. And it's also really good for me because I've been really frustrated with popular Japanese video games specifically for being like really homophobic and misogynist. Persona 5, which is a game that people love, adore. I get why they love and adore it. I like have seen all the good parts, I feel like. But I had to put it down, one, because it's too fucking long, but two, because I would be having a blast and then they'd be joking about somebody looking up this girl's skirt that's like 17. And then like there would be these like 2 gay guys that are like you see on the street every once in a while that like basically harass one of the characters the whole game. And I'm just like, is this the only representation that we've got in this video game? Yeah. With that being like the last time that I have seen queer people in Japanese media, I was like, oh, this is really refreshing.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I think too, I'm like thinking about other like same sex or like same gender dating shows like in the US. And I think, of course, of like the Ultimatum, right? Which is, they do talk about some of that stuff because some of the characters, people are queer in different ways or trans. And it's just messy. Like it doesn't sound, it's not interesting and open. It's like introduced as a point of division, right? Like it's introduced as a controversial thing or like something that could be controversial among them, right?
Well, there's one person on that show like was not identifying this way on the show, but after the show came out as non-binary and started using they them pronouns, and their gender gets brought up in a conversation on that show that I was like, this is really uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. So I like the idea that they're bringing it up in like this more like casual conversational way that feels like, certainly I've had those more confrontational conversations within the community, but like that's not what most of them are. Most of them are more like what you just described happens on the show of just like kind of slipping into, oh, is that what everybody feels comfortable with? And then like the conversation building and growing from there.
Yeah. So in a lot of ways, The Boyfriend is like the dating show that I personally have wanted for a long time. I know when I had watched Love is Blind season 6, I was like, there's literally no reason you couldn't do this with queer people. Like it would be different, but it would be good different.
Yeah. And honestly, also, there are so many. You could get a U-Haul sponsorship. It would be funny. Anyway.
I do want to talk about Love is Blind. I did not realize you'd seen all the seasons, which makes this so much easier. But I think even though there's a long history of dating shows for the straights, you know, maybe The Bachelor is the biggest name out there.
Yeah.
I think Love is Blind exemplifies all of the details of all of the possible iterations of straight dating shows. And like I said, the whole time I'm watching that 6th season, I'm like, do this with the gays. Of course. Like, everyone's like, well, they'd just be fucking each other behind the scenes. I'm like, yeah, that's good television.
Yeah. And also, you think that that's not what's happening on Love is Blind, right? Like,
Yeah.
You think that they're not hooking up, right?
Yeah.
Like, maybe not. Maybe I have the wrong perception about how these kinds of things work, but like...
Yeah. I'm curious. You've seen 6 seasons. I've seen 1. What are your general feelings about Love is Blind?
Oh boy. My general feelings about Love is Blind is that honestly it's awful. Like it's painful for me to watch in a lot of circumstances and a lot of ways. I think not just because of like, I mean, there's the heterodoxy of it all. Like the like overly aggressive like gender roles playing out, like the you know, I do understand like some of the like the experiment, right, in Love is Blind is that like you don't see each other, but like the hyper focus of I think for me I don't understand as a person how you could fall in love with someone's personality and then like just not just like love them for who they are and what they look like, right? Like that doesn't make sense to me. And I really struggle with that, right? Like I think about in this most recent season, the thing that I clocked immediately was that like took other people longer to catch on to was the couple whose names I don't remember, but he was the guy who was like the super quiet guy who then like basically didn't talk to the girl that he had proposed to for the entire time. And when they did finally talk about why and get into a fight about why, he was basically like, well, you're fake because you were wearing all of that makeup. Like you were wearing all this makeup, you were wearing these fake eyelashes, like you just didn't look like natural. And she was rightfully like very upset by that. And like that for me is like why that show is painful to watch, because I'm just like, well, of course she was, because she was on camera. Like you have to go to hair and makeup. Everyone has to go to hair and makeup. There's not a single person on the show who can walk out for the proposal moment who is not wearing a full face of makeup, right? So like I think the hardest thing for me about Love is Blind, and I've said there's a few things, but like the thing that gets me is like, what show do you think you're on?
Yeah.
Because that's the purpose. That's the premise, right? Yeah. And so I don't know. I mean, I think there are the other things of like, I don't think that Love is Blind is an interesting premise. If the premise is that like Love is Blind, then why is everyone skinny and conventionally attractive? Right? Like boring.
They set up the lowest possible stakes when it comes to like what people could look like.
Yeah. And then there are all of the other things of like, it's tough for me to see people who are clearly like very intoxicated and like being plied with alcohol. It's been hard to hear like as cast members have opened up about their experiences of like not wanting to drink, or how I've seen cast members treat each other when they're like sober, right? And then like I mean, there are parts of it that I love. I absolutely adore the dramatic stingers constantly. And I think that like 6 years ago when this show first came out, we were not really like talking about AI in the way that we are now. But I absolutely am so obsessed with like the music that comes in that then just like repeats the words of the fight that was just had to like let you know how bad it is. Like, I'm not going home with you. Like just like, it's like gonna tell you what's happening in the most like, it's just slamming you over the head with it.
Right.
And that's pretty funny. So I don't know. That's my general take on Love is Blind. It's fun to yell at the TV with my friends about it.
Absolutely. I was not going to watch season 6. I mean, I wasn't going to watch any of it. Jonathan binged like the couple seasons that were out, you know, a long time ago, but I guess he's seen all of them. But he just started watching season 6 like right before we moved here, and I watched it with him. Yeah. And mostly because of the guy who told two women the same exact thing about how much he cared about them. Matthew.
Yeah. Matthew, he's actually one of the people who was sober on the show.
Yeah.
That I think like got like the obviously what he did like by saying like using the same line was very fucked up and weird. But I also like they made fun of him for really struggling like to be social, and I think he was both an awkward person and like was the only sober person in a room full of very drunk people.
Correct.
And that is a difficult and uncomfortable place to be. There's a particular scene where like they're kind of like trying to roughhouse with him and he really is not into it. And like it's clearly like they are drunk and he is not, and he's like, fucking stop it, you know?
Yeah.
So
yeah, and it gets edited as if he's the bad guy too.
yeah.
I mean, I didn't like him at all because of what he did to those two women.
No,
but
to be clear,
yes.
he was a very emotionally manipulative, and that is bad. And also, he should be like his sobriety should be treated with like respect instead of derision.
Yeah. For me, the problem with the show is all of just how hetero it is. Like it is even just the sort of like performed monogamy of it all, especially when they're like out of the pods and stuff, or even when they get upset at each other for like going on the dates they're required to go on for the show.
Again, what show do you think that you were on?
I'm like, guys, come on. I'm sorry, but like very, very few queer people would have any of these problems. You don't even have to be a person who is interested in like polyamory or open relationships to recognize that like the way some of these people are behaving is wild.
Yeah, absolutely. And like they could introduce just like any additional element to make the show more interesting. The only interesting thing about the show is like, not only, one of the more interesting things about the show is like when the race dynamics do come into play and like they have to address that and talk about it. I find that to be fascinating. I think that that's like good television for people to see like the real ways that like differences between couples can strain and also build relationships. One of the things that I have noticed is that the majority of the successful couples from Love is Blind are interracial couples.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I've read some articles. I have seen the season 6 reunion and seen who was still together. And I've seen the couple from season 6 that got married.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually think Love is Blind is a really solid comparison to the Ultimatum Queer Love. So for the listener, if you don't know what the Ultimatum Queer Love is, it is a show where a bunch of lesbians do a wife swap, essentially. For a week.
It's so embarrassing. They made us do a fucking wife swap to give us a show.
Yeah.
It's so messy. It's just
extremely messy.
So messy. And like, to be fair, you don't have to have the lesbians swap lives for it to be messy, right?
Oh,
like
they
don't have to swap. I said lives. I meant wives. They don't have to.
Yeah.
You don't have to do a wife swap to make a lesbian dating show messy. It'll just be messy.
Right. I could not watch this show. I saw maybe 2 episodes of it, again, because Jonathan was watching it.
Yeah.
And there were multiple times I had to physically move my body out of the room.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't keep watching it.
Yeah, I think that like the ways that like the heterosexual stereotypes that play out in like Love is Blind, like Ultimatum Queer Love really, really relies on those same stereotypes. Yep. For lesbians, and it sucks, honestly. I gotta be honest, it sucks.
The whole time I was thinking, one, there are just some people on this show who believe way too hard in some shit that like I haven't been burdened by in basically since I came out.
Yeah.
And also the people making this show, queer or not, have not figured out how to make a dating show that like doesn't have all of these assumptions built in.
Yeah. I mean, it is funny, like in that like they have like they chose people to be on this show who like really do fulfill like the stereotypes, right? Like my partner and I have watched it and we're like, oh wow, that person, I know that lesbian, right? Like, oh, I know that lesbian, right? Like I know the stereotypes of these kinds of people and they do exist in our community, but like it's also, as always, like it loses the actual like richness and like very like the things that make our community cool and interesting when it's flattened to this like I don't know, wife swap bullshit.
Yeah.
Honestly, that is also part of why it's hard for me to watch these shows, is because and why like this show, like The Boyfriend, sounds really interesting to me in this like slice of life way. Obviously, we're gonna get into the dark side in a moment. I can feel it coming. I like how you have described like the openness that they converse with each other, and like, or the openness that they have with each other. Because one of the things that I really struggle with in Love is Blind and Queer Ultimatum are like just the level of blatant manipulation.
Yep.
And like, I don't know, it feels hard to watch people who seem to be coming into their relationships like on a fundamental foundation of mistrust.
Yeah.
And like who aren't interested in like doing the work to build like genuine trust and interest in each other. I'm thinking in particular of, in the most recent season, Izzy and I don't remember her name, the couple who wound up like breaking up because of like one of their financial situations, right? And like not being honest about what their financial situation was or something like that, right?
Right.
And like I really, again, really struggle with like, I would never, like that's not something that comes to my mind of like, I won't get into a relationship with someone who like is in a bad financial situation. There's a million reasons why someone might be in a tough financial situation, and also like we live in a capitalist hellscape. It's not like,
but also like you're gonna have that conversation with the person,
right,
and talk about what it means or doesn't mean to you.
Yeah. And like it sounds like maybe like the problem, the way the show makes the problem out to be is like the financial situation, but like to me it's like, well, the problem was the lying, right? Like, why aren't we talking, we can focus on the lying, that's like
right,
a difficult thing that should be worked through. But also, could we talk about like financial shame and like financial literacy of like, oh, I lied to you about this because I feel embarrassed around it, and because talking about finances is something that like carries a lot of shame in American culture. If you are like from specific classes of people that it seems like he is from, and like, anyway, sorry, I won't get on my soapbox about that. But
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm with you. Talk to me about values-based budgeting at some point.
Ooh.
I'm happy to have that conversation. Not on the show because it is too close to my job.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm with you. That show for me is basically these producers making a straight dating show that happens to have a bunch of queer people on it.
Yeah.
Which is why when the boyfriend shows up and like is like, hey, over here's this pile of quote unquote trash television, that is genuinely interesting to watch a lot of the time. And then the boyfriend walks in, I'm like, oh, that's what I've been looking for, right?
Yeah, that's cool.
But there's a few things about the boyfriend that I haven't shared with you yet.
Great.
If you've only been watching American reality shows, then you'll at least be used to confessionals. But you might not be used to this thing that some Japanese reality shows do, which is they have a panel. So the boyfriend does do confessionals in small moments. They're not as like overused as like The Real World or Survivor or something like that. But it does have this panel of like comedians, TV personalities. There's a drag queen on the panel for this show. The show will start off, it'll have like a little vignette of the boys doing something, and then it'll cut to this panel and they are reacting to what we've just seen.
Oh.
And they're talking about it between each other. Then it'll show more of the show. And like maybe if something intense happens, one of the voices will cut in and like comment on the thing happening. And they won't like cut all the way to it. And then partway through the show, they'll cut back to the panel and they'll react to what's happened. This usually happens 2 or 3 times. And then like the final beat when like you're getting towards the end of the episode and there's something, really dramatic about to happen. Really dramatic is,
juicy.
Yeah.
We're getting to the meat of the show, the boiled chicken smoothie of the show. Sorry.
Yes. They'll cut back to the panel and the panel will be like, what? And then it'll cut to the credits. And this completely changes the vibe of the show. Because not only are you watching this relaxed thing that is intentionally edited to be more interesting than maybe it is, you're now watching it with 5 other people who were having reactions the same way that you're having reactions. So even if you're watching it alone, you're watching it in company. And it becomes even more of a comfort watch than it was just as the show itself.
It's like director's commentary.
Yes.
Like, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, but it's like built into the structure of the show.
That's so interesting. Is that format like unique to Japanese reality television?
So I can't claim that it was invented by this, but a lot of our listeners are probably screaming
Oh no.
because it's going to sound extremely familiar to a show called Terrace House.
Oh, the show that you like. I see.
Yeah.
I see.
So this is the exact format of Terrace House. In 2019, when you would see the show talked about on the internet, you'd often hear it called like a show where nothing happens, but it's also a really mellow show about people living in a house together. It's way less of a dating show than this is, but it was still kind of unofficially a dating show. Like people would go on it to find love, but of the 8 people there, maybe 3 people would be interested, or 5 even, you know. It had even less contrived dramatic moments, but things still happened. So like on The Boyfriend, they will say like, hey, you get to go on a one-on-one date. And they'll be like, who do you want to go with? You'll only get to go if it's mutual. And like, that is the most contrived it gets on that show. Terrace House didn't do any of that. They just put people in a house. It was very real world, just no confessionals, and instead you got a panel. And the producers were theoretically less involved behind the scenes. Theoretically will be important. I will say we're not quite there yet, but I just want to put a content warning out there for self-harm and online social media harassment. We actually talked about this, I believe, in the first episode, maybe the second episode that we recorded. And I ended up cutting it out because just like the darkness of this story didn't fit the vibe of that episode at the time. I think it's important to bring up in the context of The Boyfriend. Yeah. So like I said, Terrace House would start with this panel. They would like introduce the concept of what's going on in this episode. Then they'd get into we'd see the happenings in the house. And then they'd break in like 2 more times within the episode, usually right after something interesting would happen. And in fact, in The Boyfriend, one of the panelists is Yoshimi Tokui, who left the panel from Terrace House in 2020 because of tax fraud.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If you know anything about like how that stuff works in Japan, like often your agents will drop you for stuff that's like, we don't drop people as easily in the States for stuff.
For sure. Yeah.
Right. And he kind of almost by a miracle didn't get dropped for this tax fraud thing. And this is him kind of coming back to this style of show. Okay. But to get into the things that I was telling you before, again, big content warning on this. Terrace House ended in 2020. Okay. And it ended because of the death of one of the cast members. Her name was Hana Kimura, and she died by suicide. She was a professional wrestler. She had a really super minor incident on the show where she yanked one of her roommate's hats off and threw it across the room because he had washed her very expensive wrestling uniform in the laundry and ruined it. And then COVID shut down the show. Like shortly after this. I believe it might have been the last episode or one of the last 2. They come out in parts usually, so it'll be part 1 is like 4 or 5 episodes, part 2, part 3. And in part 3, this had happened. The episode aired March 31st, 2020, and Hana died in May of 2020. I believe because people had like all of this time to focus on the last thing that had happened in this show, right? So she was getting relentlessly bullied online, and this moment had been amped up by the production of the TV show to be, frankly, bigger than it actually was in terms of her reaction. It was what happened to her uniform was unfair. Yeah. But like her reaction to it was like, honestly, like kind of smaller than I would expect. And that led to her death. And in the wake of that, we learned a ton about how Terrace House is made. There's these 2 articles that I'll link in the show notes. One is from Vox called The Tragic Lie Behind the Beautiful Dream of Terrace House. And there's one from the New York Times called The Fall of Terrace House. We would come to learn that the producers had encouraged Hana to get angrier and maybe even pushed her to get physical with the roommate who ruined her uniform. And we would learn from Lauren Tsai, a former cast member from Terrace House Aloha State a couple seasons before, that, quote, it's probably the least real reality show. It was filmed, quote, like a Japanese drama. She said the cameras aren't around all day. Rather, the film crew comes around the house a few hours every night, or maybe every few nights, or if there's a filmable excursion, like a group trip or a date. So they would tell them not to talk. But of course, they're living together and they would talk and have conversations. So they would end up having to film, like have those conversations for recording. Yeah. And then she said it caused a lot of tension between the cast members and the producers. She said it was non-scripted, quote, but at the same time, it was extremely scripted. We only filmed a couple hours a day and not even every day. So what you say is what they tell you to say. Like, oh, talk about that thing, right? So they're not giving you a script, but even though the show literally started with the phrase, there's no script at all, largely behind the scenes because of the way that they did filming, they were saying, oh, hey, we missed this. Can you talk about this thing that happened?
Yeah.
Right.
Doing like heavy-handed prompting.
Right. And now when I watch that show, I can see the production's hand, right?
Yeah.
When I was watching it before Hannah's death, and before we knew all of this, I could see like, there's no way you could get a handheld camera in there without like reshooting this, right? Like that stuff was obvious to me. Now, one thing that Taking Away Confessionals did was imply that there was no crew there, right? But now that I can see this, I can almost see like, oh, even the energy you're bringing into the room is like, you faked walking down the stairs as if you wanted to have this conversation. Whereas other scenes, I can be like, oh, this is you just waking up in the morning and happen to be on the stationary camera.
Yeah.
Right. It's really obvious to me now, like what's happening in what context.
Yeah.
So that season, which was the 2019-2020 season in Tokyo, it was put on hold for COVID. It was indefinitely on hold after Hana died. And then pretty shortly after, the season was canceled. And then not too long after that, Fuji Television and Netflix canceled the show entirely. So there will be no more Terrace House. It is over. You can still watch all previous seasons of Terrace House, and you can watch parts 1 and 2 of the season that Hana was on. But the part 3 that had the incident that led to her death is no longer up on Netflix. This was obviously it was really tough for a lot of people, but like as a person watching television, it was hard because I found Terrace House in January of 2020. So there was a first season of Terrace House called Terrace House Boys and Girls Next Door, which aired from 2012 to 2014. It kind of just went as long as it took until the producers were like, okay, we've got a show. And they did almost like a reunion movie called Closing Door that was a theatrical release in Japan.
Oh, a movie.
This show was like super popular.
Yeah, interesting.
Netflix joins, like it goes global on Netflix, I'll say, with Boys and Girls in the City, which was aired from 2015 to 2016. That was the second season that I watched because I watched some stuff out of order. And then they went to Hawaii and did Terrace House Aloha State from 2016 to 2017. That's the season that Lauren Tsai was on, the one that kind of gave us all the details around production. And then my first season, which was Terrace House Opening New Doors, that aired from 2017 to 2019.
Okay.
When you and I have talked about vacations and whatnot and places that we want to go. I've said I want to go to Karuizawa. It was filmed in Karuizawa. Okay. And that is why I want to go there.
Yeah. Yeah.
It looks beautiful. It's in Nagano. It's gorgeous. Yeah. And then came Tokyo 2019, 2020. It's sad the show doesn't exist anymore, but I'm glad that like people are, doing what they need to do to make sure no one else is harmed. It came out that like they didn't even get social media training to be on the show. Or like any kind of guidance or protection or anything like that, something that is pretty common on other reality shows, right? Yeah. I don't know how common it is in various countries or whatever, but at least on American reality shows, it is a thing that happens. Yeah. Because you're going on a show that's going to be seen by people, especially if it's as popular as Terrace House, and it's pretty wild, frankly, that some basic social media expectations at least weren't set. Or check-ins even, right? Like it's crazy to me that this was going on for a month and no one from production reached out to Hana or her family.
That's so interesting. I did have one question. Was it primarily like Japanese fans of the audience?
That's a great
targeting
question.
Her? Or was it like as the fan base grew more global, it was like all, from all parts of the globe?
I don't have any idea. I was not watching this season live. And also, it'd be hard. I don't know that the distinction terribly matters.
Sure.
Because I do think that in retrospect, I think the way that I've seen American fans talk about the show was equally problematic.
Sure.
And so Lauren Tsai herself is a polarizing person. Actually, her appearance on Terrace House is polarizing, is what I'll say.
Okay.
And I enjoy watching her on the show. I'll
Mhm.
put that out there. But I try not to talk about Terrace House, but in circles where I feel like I can,
Mhm.
I often don't bring up Lauren because I don't want to get in a situation where we're just like talking shit on real people that happen to be on TV.
Yeah. Yeah, that's hard.
And that sucks because I really enjoy watching her on the show. And sometimes I'm
Yeah.
like, oh man, this is so funny. I don't know. I've seen even just like Googling around for stuff about the like, the lineage that leads up to the boyfriend. I found a lot of like Reddit discussions that I was just really uncomfortable reading that were not
Yeah.
even, they're recent. They're like 2 years old.
I mean, I asked that like you're right. It doesn't
Yeah.
actually make any difference. Like I asked that more just like because I'm kind of like curious about
Yeah,
like,
same.
the context, like how global was the show in terms of like its fan base? Because I think that sometimes like you're right. I was actually going to ask this about the boyfriend. Like, is it that it is it's a Netflix show or it was
Yeah.
a show that existed and then got picked up by Netflix?
So Terrace House itself was a show that existed on Fuji TV in,
Okay, and then got
in
picked up by
Japan and
Netflix.
was aired on Netflix and whatever.
Okay.
And then had its theatrical release, but then like went global with the second season on Netflix as well.
Okay.
And another weird thing about Terrace House was they could watch the show because the show was going on for like a year, sometimes 2 years at a time, and it was airing while they were there. So they like after a delay of like 6 weeks, they could watch themselves and also watch themselves be commented on by this panel of comedians.
I don't like that. I
Yeah.
don't like that. I mean, I think that's such an interesting dynamic, right? Because like certainly part of this, like Love Is Blind, Queer Ultimatum, but even shows like Big Brother, right? Like they are like filming, and for the time that they're filming, they are isolated, right? And like I think one of the things that I think about on Love Island all the time is like there's a million reasons why I would never go on Love Island if given the opportunity, but at the top of the list is no book, no phone, no TV.
Yeah.
Like you cannot have any media. You cannot listen to music. You have to be like present and in this space 100% of the time. Is that something that we see in like Terrace House? Like, are they forced to like focus on interaction, or is this like, or I guess on the boyfriend would be my other question too. Is it like
neither of these shows do it that way? So like
Okay,
the boyfriend, the
interesting.
guys all have their phones. They're like texting each other. That's like one of the pieces of drama is like one of them is interested in the other, and they'll one of them's working and the other will text the other one.
do they talk about like texting other like people outside of the show though as well? Because like sometimes on the productions they have like production phones where they
Yeah.
can text and talk to each other. Like that's true on The Circle, right? They have phones, but they're very limited in what they can do and how they can like who they can contact.
They so in one of the early episodes, Dai goes and sees all his girlfriends
okay.
and like hangs out with them.
Cute. Okay.
You'll see more of that kind of thing in Terrace House because it's honestly just like a bunch of people that mostly live there or are like trying to use this as a vacation. So they'll, go do things outside the house a lot. Here, the most of the things they go do outside the house are go work at the coffee truck or
Okay.
go on a date or
Interesting.
something.
Yeah.
So it's not isolated really at all, but it just the nature of the show, especially. So one thing that the boyfriend does is it's only a month long, whereas Terrace House was like a really long thing. So you kind of don't want to be isolated for a
Right.
question
yeah.
mark amount of time.
Yeah.
This is a month long, so like the impact is much lower. Also, you're not gonna edit an episode of the show in a month, right?
Yeah.
It's not gonna be ready. It's not gonna be distribution ready.
Yeah. Interesting.
So I think what's interesting about the boyfriend is that it's clear to me that film crews are still like they're on set in the same way that it was obvious to me in Terrace House, but instead of these sort of like immaculately filmed like hangout scenes that you'll see in Terrace House, they have taken part of their production and moved it over to these stationary cameras that they set up in various rooms. And a lot of the more quote unquote dramatic moments get caught on those cameras. So there's this episode I watched the other day. Only 8 of 10 episodes of the first season are out right now. Shun and somebody are like in the living room having a conversation. Shun's like playing the piano. It's just like they're hanging out at night, but he's talking about the guy that he's interested in. And like no one was like sitting there watching them have that conversation. It just got caught on one of the cameras, you know? And so you don't have that problem where the cast are asked to like refilm conversations or anything like that. There are still a lot of really manufactured moments. Like I said, Kazuto is super popular and people pull him aside one-on-one to confess their feelings to him like constantly. There's an episode where he gets pulled aside. He comes back in from that and someone is like, can we have a conversation? Like, it's literally one right after the other. And they will do that out by the pool in these chairs where sometimes they'll sit and have like a very staged conversation. And that it's very clear there's like crew waiting for them right there.
Yeah.
I don't know if these guys get social media training or protection in the way that we talked about they don't on Terrace House. I'm talking about the production a lot because there's some interesting differences. But a while back, I'd say probably the most famous ex-Terrace House cast member got engaged, and her fiance had the whole like journey filmed for them for YouTube as if it were like a Terrace House episode.
Oh.
And a lot of the team that was on like the crew for Terrace House worked on that production.
Interesting.
I watched a couple of those and then I just like kind of got grossed out by it and couldn't do it anymore. The interesting thing to me is that the boyfriend doesn't feel like that for all of the reasons I've laid out. But also I keep seeing things that claim this show shares production staff with Terrace House. And I looked into that. And it might be really difficult to find out about individuals, right? But as far as I can tell, that's like completely untrue.
Interesting.
So Terrace House was created by East Television, which is now called E&W because of, you know, everything that happened. And it was created for Fuji Television and Netflix. The Boyfriend is produced by Kyoto Television, who up until now mostly have produced scripted Japanese dramas. They made a different reality show called Ainori, which had its own production and casting issues. They put their cast through a lot of stuff that weren't great. I didn't watch it though. And I don't know enough to comment on it. But what I can see here is that they are trying something different because of the thing they're going for, but also like the structure of the show doesn't like lead to some of the issues that come up in Terrace House.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things about like who is making the show is that the sort of lead producer and casting director is this guy named Taiki. He's a vlogger and he's known for his YouTube videos with his partner Noah. They are Japanese and Korean. I don't know who is from where, but like that's part of the thing behind the show, right? Is that he very clearly was like, oh, I want to be a part of this because I would like to see this, you know, exist in the world.
So I guess like some of my question is, like, so the stationary cameras, I'm always fascinated by like when people who are on these kinds of shows like get downtime, right? Do you have any sense of like, do they get breaks of like the stationary cameras are off between this time and this time? Or is it like, I kind of have mentioned Big Brother, but we haven't like said the thing that actually like skeeves me out about Big Brother so much is that like, the live stream cameras, you can watch them 24/7, like when the show is recording. And that I hate that as a premise. I mean, I never am the kind of person who would sign up to go up on that kind of show, but I like just the idea that like you can't go somewhere and scratch your ass without it being caught on camera is like very unsettling to me. And like yada yada yada. I've already invited the surveillance state into my home via the you know, devices sitting around me, but like that kind of like knowledge of its presence is really discomforting to me. Do you have any sense of like, is that true on The Boyfriend, or is it like kind of like distanced from that and like kept at arm's length by the style of like the edit and stuff like that?
I think it's the latter. There are cameras in their bedrooms and you can tell when they cut to them because just like the quality of the, you know, of the shot. I don't know. Maybe some of these guys are just really good actors or whatever, but they don't seem to be aware that the cameras are on or like bothered by the fact the cameras are on. Right. So I don't know how much downtime there is. I won't say who, but there is a date that happens where it's clear that one of the stationary cameras is on the first time this couple has sex. And the whole time I'm watching, I'm like, okay, but when do they turn the camera off?
Yeah.
Because they're having a lot of like intimate conversations, and we're getting the before and the after that are like right down to the moment. And I'm like, so I think the camera was just on the whole time.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Interesting.
You have to know what you're getting into.
Yeah. Gosh. I find stuff like, I mean, obviously we've talked about a number of reality shows at this point, and like I find this stuff so fascinating. And like the ethics of this, like what do you know that you sign up for? Like hearing about like the consequences, right? Of like putting like I think that there's something that you said that really resonated with me is like it feels weird to talk about these people. I even slipped up earlier, right? I said like characters, but like they're cast members, they're people, right? They're real people. Like, and it's so interesting to talk about like, oh, who's your favorite, or like what are these dynamics of real people? And I don't even know. I like just my brain is spinning thinking about all of this right now.
Yeah. Are you down for me to tell you some of the details of their drama between each other? Okay.
Absolutely.
So I've mentioned before that everyone loves Kazuto. This causes so much drama because there's like 5 boys that love this man, and some of them, and like some of the other guys are also into those guys.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
So very early, Kazuto comes in and is like the favorite. Before that's kind of established, Gensei and Ryota work together, and Gensei falls hard for Ryota. Like, and like he shows him, because Ryota's a model and a barista. He like shows Gensei like, okay, we're gonna go work on the coffee truck. Here's how to do these various things. And like while this is happening, you can kind of see him like staring at him like a certain, just like he's like very like this
dog.
is so cute. I can't believe he's teaching me these things. And like throughout the show, he will make him a cafe mocha. Like Ryota will make Gensei a cafe mocha, and Gensei takes it way more seriously than Ryota is taking it.
Oh,
Because Ryota loves Kazuto.
Oh.
And they have this conversation, and Gensei is very clear about his feelings. He like buys Ryota a necklace at one point.
Okay.
And Ryota wears it, but is just not interested at all. And we don't know what's happened yet, but I just got to an episode where they mutually agreed to go on a date.
Gasp.
And I'm just like, finally, is Kazuto going to stop being the center of attention and stop ruining all the other chances these people have at love?
I really hope that like the last episode, something super dramatic with Kazuto happens, just so that it's like that satisfying moment of, I don't know.
The thing that I think is going to happen is that he's going to vocalize all of these overwhelmed feelings and go home alone intentionally.
Yeah.
But who knows? He did just go on a second one-on-one date with the same guy.
Uh-oh. 2 dates in a row.
Yeah, so...
Here come the wedding bells.
He and Alan went on a one-on-one sleepaway date. Hi, Phoenix. I see you. Oh, my goodness. And Alan very much wanted to get down, and Kazuto was not ready for that. And Alan just came on very strong, not in like a harmful way, just came on really strong. And I think Kazuto was put off by that. But they've been like
flirty,
still flirty and like figuring it out. But he's also the only one that Kazuto showed any interest in. Okay, Phoenix. Okay, what was I talking about?
You were
Kazuto and Alan.
Your conjecture, yeah. So I guess like that's an interesting question. Something that I think that I'm always really curious about is like, with the rise of like intimacy coordinators, right, in like more in stage productions, right, like. Do you know if that's like, is that something that they offer like at all? Like, how do the cast members like talk about and deal with boundaries? It seems like, you say Kazuto like wasn't into it, right? But like, was that like handled well by the show?
It's hard for like, so in the scene, Alan asks if they can wash each other, and Kazuto says no, and Alan kind of runs with it. Like he's like okay with that, and then they're like going to bed, and he asks if he can give him a massage, and they kind of have a discussion about it, and then Kazuto agrees, but then like it's clear that like nothing he gave a massage and like nothing happened after that.
Fade to black, but it's not like sexy fade to black.
Exactly. I don't know anything about intimacy coordinators or any other kind of person on staff, but that particular situation felt like a little boundary pushing, but didn't feel non-consensual, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah. I am always like, there are some things where I just feel like so nervous because it seems like people like don't want to be there. And that is always hard for me to watch. So I guess it's good to hear that, like, I think that like even if it's boundary pushing, right? Like it doesn't necessarily like asking to do different things can be a really good way to like, or like get a sense of like what someone is comfortable with. Right. Yeah. And it can, like, we do, like, there is, like, you know, situational awareness that happens of, like, how does the other person feel or react in that scenario?
Right.
Like, do they feel like they're being pressured? They also, like, I don't know. There's also, like, a difference between pressuring someone and, like, you're in a new experience with someone new trying to learn what they are interested in. Right.
You are on a television show trying to find out if you're going to date this person.
You're looking for love, right? You want to smash.
Yeah. There's also Dai and Shun. So early on, a few people are interested in Shun. Even Ryota's interested in Shun at one point. But Shun and Dai show mutual interest. They have an on again, off again the whole show. They work together and have a great time, and then start being like kind of cute on the couch and stuff. And then they go on a one-on-one date to the aquarium, and Shun decides that because Dai is like, oh, these otters are so cute, that like their personalities don't match. Yeah. When I say he comes off as the youngest on the show, this is what I mean. He like reads into these signals that I don't get what he's seeing. He's like, oh, Dai is like too, like the equivalent of Dai is too extroverted, right? And like he's not saying this, but it gives me shades of like what I guess what you would say in the US is like somebody might say that they're like too gay, like, or quote unquote they make their sexuality their personality, you know? Yeah.
Or like not playing the game of like hard to get or like cool and aloof enough.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. You're like, I mean, who amongst us would ever be accused of not being aloof enough? It's me for sure. I'm either fully detached from the conversation or 100% present, and there's no in between.
Right. They proceed to have this thing. This is why that like really dramatic moment is when he and Shun and Dai are like cuddling on the couch, and he's like got his head on Dai's lap, and Dai just like kind of touches his like belly area, and Shun just like moves his hand onto the couch, and that's like one of the stingers, you know. And it's very clearly like he's not as interested as Dai is. This like just happened, but when Ikuo joins the cast, he and Dai hit it off so fast. And Dai and Shun are like in this kind of low point at the time, and Shun immediately is like, oh fuck, I fucked up. Like he's like I you know, he's gonna go with him, and I'm not gonna get, you know, the man that I want, after he's spent 4 episodes like giving him the literal cold shoulder. And like their on again off again is so frustrating. Honestly, one of my things that I just like look at the way these guys try and date each other, I'm like, this would be a so much more interesting show if you all just accepted that like this one's not going to work out. Let's go try somebody else.
Yeah.
Like I said, there's only 2 episodes left. They'll probably be out by the time this episode comes out. But I don't know. It's especially in a world where like I missed Terrace House a lot. Right. And also have said, like, after watching Love is Blind season 6, I was like, okay, why can't we do this with the gays? Because I don't buy any of the arguments. Like,
there's a market for it.
Yeah. Seeing the teaser for this, I immediately was like, oh my God, I have to watch the show.
Yeah.
Did not expect these 2 things that I love so much to merge. I'm sending you the teaser that I watched.
Oh, yeah. Excellent.
キスすれば本当に好きか分かるんだと思う。
はじめまして。
はじめまして。
気になってる人はいる。
一番好き。アクション起こしたもん勝ち。ありがとう。大切にします。ごめんね。
なんでこんな風に生まれてきちゃったんだ。
Sorry, gotta pause for 1 second. I have to go back. I can't believe I'm gonna go back to. Oh, okay. Oh, they're brainstorming. Okay,
yes.
I see what's happening. They're brainstorming names for the coffee shop here.
Yes.
It says, just for the audio medium of it all, he's writing on a chalkboard and it says brutiful. Brutiful. But I thought it just said beautiful and like there was no R. It was like BEW. I was like, don't put him on blast like that in the trailer. Damn.
So the worst part of this show is that ChatGPT named the coffee truck.
Is the what? Sorry.
ChatGPT named the coffee truck because they had all these ideas and they couldn't decide, and so Di pulls out ChatGPT and it named it Brutiful You.
Perfect. I hate that. A story about men and boyfriends.
So the scene where you see like the guy like climb onto bed with the shirt off.
Yeah.
That's the scene with Kazuto and Alan that I was talking about.
Interesting. I think that I haven't said that. The premise of the show is that you should date your coworker. Is that
What do
right?
you mean?
Like
they're working together in this coffee shop, and therefore
no, but like they work together, they live together, and it's like you should go on dates with your coworker. like historically one of the worst ideas possible, right? Dating your coworker.
Yeah.
Although I say that, but many people meet at work, yada yada yada. I've dated people that I've worked with. It's a choice.
to be fair,
that you
I think they are using the working together
Coworker.
as a very light veneer for a date.
Yeah, can you actually go to this coffee truck like when they're filming? Like do they have actual customers? Okay.
They're selling to like random people near beaches and stuff.
Okay, interesting.
One of the funniest things is like the amount of money they make.
No. Oh no. Okay, wait.
The first time that they go out, they make 1,700 yen, which is roughly $11. Reminder, they have a small budget that they've broken down, which is 6,600 yen per day. So 6,600 yen is $43 a day for 8 men.
Oof.
Right? Like, that's not a lot of money. And then all the other money that they make or that they can spend comes from the coffee truck. So to go out the first day and make $11, everyone's like, cool.
Yikes.
They get to where they're making like 11,000 yen.
Okay.
Which is more than their daily budget, right?
Yeah.
So it's better. But it's just so funny. They start off so slow.
Yeah.
At one point, Tokui's like, they sold 14 cookies.
Oh my gosh, that's so interesting. And you said like that the budget is like a lot of like the source of the tension in the house, or is
It's
it just specifically about the boiled chicken smoothies?
So it is the tension because of the boiled chicken smoothies. So like the first half of the season is Yusak being told that he can't have his boiled chicken smoothies, which he supposedly needs to maintain his figure for his job, and him being like, but I don't want to buy the cheap chicken breasts for my boiled chicken smoothies. And then Dai having to learn to confront people when he has feelings. And at one point
he's
he says,
upset that they've spent all of their money on chicken breasts for boiled chicken smoothies.
At one point he's like, I did something really hard and I feel like my opinion was ignored. And like, yeah, but also you're talking about boiled chicken smoothies.
The number of times that the phrase boiled chicken smoothie, a phrase that I never thought I would utter, have been used in this episode. We need a counter.
Yeah. Great idea for a TikTok, by the way. That's all to say that I recommend watching this show. If you want something to relax, something that is non-stressful. For me, it's often a way to not be looking at my phone because I find that I need to read the subtitles and therefore cannot be on my phone, and it's hard for me to pay attention to other things. It is a show that I tend to yell at the screen, but not like out of the stress of, other shows or like a Love is Blind or something like that. It's out of like, come on, just kiss, or, or like me just complaining about Shun the whole time. It kind of gives me the catharsis that you get out of talking about crushes or like venting with a friend, that kind of thing. That's what this show is doing for me.
Yeah, and I like that you like that introduction of like the panel format that I'm less familiar with, right? As like I like the way that you said that like it makes it so that you're not always watching it, like you're always watching it with someone, even when you're watching it alone. And I love that, like, it has that experience for you of like the live commentary and like you're talking out loud to yourself essentially, right? But like talking to the TV about this. I love that idea. So I'm definitely gonna watch this. This sounds like up my alley. Like even just the premise of like a slice of life reality show, like a true slice of life reality show, right? And like the slice of life as the style, not just like it's summer house, rich people in the Hamptons every weekend, right? You know, like regular people go to their regular job, which is I suppose what Real World was supposed to be, but like, you know.
This is so much more low energy. Maybe like Real World seasons 1 and 2 were more this vibe. And honestly, those are the ones people remember anyway. So
yeah.
I will say just panel stuff. I think I like the energy of the panels on Terrace House better just because like they're like more boisterous characters. These panels are more fun to watch. Like just because not everyone's a comedian, right? But also there's an understanding that these kinds of shows have had problems before. And so everyone is just much kinder.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, kind isn't always funny or interesting.
Right.
But I feel less on edge, right?
Yeah, it
than I
certainly
did
makes
when
it,
I was watching Terrace House.
More soothing, right? Like back to that conversation about the, you know, the Great Pottery Throwdown. It is a competition, right? There is that competition element, but part of what makes it good is that like they are kind and encouraging to each other, even when they like miss the mark, right? And that does make for good TV. Being kind is good TV, you know?
Yeah, I'm looking for the panel cast because one of the things is that, like I said, there's a drag queen on it, and like in episode 3, she transforms and becomes her drag persona, and I don't remember which one she is. So the panel cast is Yoshimi Tokui, Megumi Chiaki Horan, Thelma Aoyama, Durian Lolo Brigida, which is the drag queen.
Yeah, I love that. Durian is a great drag name.
Oh, and here she is with Taiki and Noah on Instagram. The number of times that you be real while we're recording is so funny.
We'll do a super cut at the end of like all of the every time AC be real this season on Can't Let It Go.
So that's the boyfriend. Then that's all I got for you.
I love. Okay. We didn't do any nonsense at the front, but I don't have any nonsense for you. Do you have any nonsense for the pod?
I figured you'd tell me if you had nonsense, and I don't have any nonsense for the ending. So
I don't have any nonsense. But did you want to mention that we missed a week, but we're so sorry.
Oh my God.
We had like a total time slip.
AT and I just forgot that a week existed. That's why the episode didn't come out on Tuesday.
When you texted me, that was when I realized. I was like, oh, yeah, okay, that did happen. I'm so sorry.
I went to upload our episode and saw last episode 17 days ago. And I said, what the fuck? Part of it is that I went on vacation to Bogota and then came back and we recorded not on a Sunday. And then I immediately went to New York for 3 days for work.
Yeah.
And while I was there is when the episode should have come out. But I was like, oh, it's not been 2 weeks. It had been, in fact, been 2 weeks.
Listener, it had been 2 weeks.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh, I should probably get that episode ready for Tuesday. And like, I just did it in like an hour or so. And was going to upload. I was like, oh, yep, we're 3 days behind, not 4 days early. That's cool.
Yeah.
Which is to say, you were going to get this episode on the day you were supposed to get it.
Heck yeah.
So there was just a 3-week gap.
We're keeping that content stream going, baby. Yeah. We didn't forget about you. We're so sorry. We love you.
But now it means you got episodes 2 weeks in a row.
Hey. And actually, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, Matt, we might be in your ears again, even again.
Yeah. We're working on something. We've actually, I believe, hinted at it a couple times in recent memory. I would be checking your feeds on the 13th, joining us in the Discord for sure, where that will probably be the best place to be for information when that is ready to go. But if you just want to subscribe to the feed, you'll get all the details there too. Got something that's been cooking for a little while that I'm excited that is going to be out there.
Yeah, it's a pretty exciting, very cool little thing that we're excited to bring to you. Just a little morsel.
Yes. Oh boy, a little morsel. That really undersells how I feel about the work ahead of me.
A juicy, delicious morsel.
That maybe Kazuto would cook up in his kitchen.
A chicken smoothie, a chicken smoothie of a project.
A chicken. I promise it will be tastier than a boiled chicken smoothie.
Horrifying. Abject horror. I think that they call that pink slime, right? Like that's what pink slime is. Cool.
Yeah,
right.
I think it's like way
I think
less
also pink
processed
slime
than
is
that, but
before. Okay, that's enough about pink slime.
Shout out to the rest of the network, The Worst Garbage. Over at theworstgarbage.online, you can find links to shows like Video Game Podtimism, .zip, Frog of the Week, Into the Aether, and Pause and Claws. All of those shows have really cool shit happening right now. I feel like I always know about something secret that like one of the podcasts is doing, and I'm like always hiding something these days.
Yeah, I just would make sure you subscribe to all of them because they're all very good.
Yeah. Thanks to The Worst Garbage for having us. Find our stuff at can'tletitgo.gay or theworstgarbage.online. AC, where can people find you?
You can find me on the internet at this great website, acfachi.com.
You can find me at matthorton.live, which will also be interesting on the 13th, I think.
Ooh.
Thank you to Scout, host of Paws and Claws, for our art. Pay her to make you some art at ko-fi.com/humblegoat. And to my friend Ethan, who is Pragmatism on Twitter, for our music. And we'll talk to you next time.
Bye.
TWG, The Worst Garbage, online.